Good day, America. You're watching Liquid Lunch on Newsmax TV. I'm Frank Morano. John A. Tobacco Jr., who generally sits in this chair, is on assignment, from what I understand. He is in the Sunshine State of Florida, and apple a day keeps John Tobacco away. So we're going to do the best that we can to keep him at bay in Florida. Well, if we play our cards right, we will check in with John via Skype a little bit later. If we play our cards even more correctly, perhaps he won't be able to hear the things that we say, which could lead to some very, very comedic exchanges. But the thing that everybody is talking about is last night's Democratic presidential debate. I have to be honest, I'm a little bored of this story already. Maybe it's because I watched very little of the debate. I ended up getting home a little later than I would have liked, which we'll talk about in a minute. But the story that everybody began the day talking about was the story of Hunter Biden. Hunter Biden is the former vice president's son, and he was accused of maybe some conflict of interest with respect to his work in Ukraine and some other countries. And Joe Biden addressed these allegations head on last night.
I carried out the policy of the United States government in rooting out corruption in Ukraine. And that's what we should be focusing on. And what I wanted to make a point about, and my son's statement speaks for itself. He spoke about it today. My son's statement speaks for itself.
So this was an interesting debate for a few reasons. The dynamic of this race, the dynamic going into this debate was a little bit different because for the first time, Elizabeth Warren came into this debate as the front runner. What did that lead to? Well, that's what happens with front runners. Everybody attacked her. Everybody picked on her, including Minnesota Senator Amy Klobuchar, who took issue with Elizabeth Warren's characterization of whether or not the middle class would get a tax increase. Take a look at this.
Will you raise taxes on the middle class to pay for it, yes or no?
So I have made clear what my principles are here, and that is costs will go up for the wealthy and for big corporations, and for hardworking middle-class families, costs will go down.
I appreciate Elizabeth's work, but again, the difference between a plan and a pipe dream is something that you can actually get done. And we can get this public option done, and we can take on the pharmaceutical companies and bring down the prices.
Why is Amy Klobuchar still up there? What is she bringing to the table? Who's Amy Klobuchar? You know, her most noteworthy moment in the campaign came the weekend she announced her candidacy, and then one of her former staffers told a newspaper that when there was no fork for her to eat her salad, she used a hair comb as the salad fork and then threw it back at the staffer and said, "Clean it." That's the Amy Klobuchar that I want to see during this campaign. That would at least be interesting. This woman is adding nothing. She's adding nothing in terms of tone. She's adding nothing in terms of substance. She's adding nothing in terms of humor. She's adding nothing in terms of the aesthetics of the debate stage. There's 12 candidates on that stage. I could do without Amy Klobuchar. And I have some serious questions about how she even qualified for this debate to begin with, because I have a feeling she used some of her donors to her Senate campaign in order to qualify under the umbrella of them being presidential campaign donations. I have some serious questions about Ms. Klobuchar. However, she did take issue with Elizabeth Warren and whether or not her plan is actually a middle tax increase. Now, of course it is. But the thing is, nobody really wants to run for president saying, we're going to raise your taxes. The one guy that is doing that, and we're going to get into this a little bit more with John Burnett in just a few minutes, the one guy that is doing that is Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders, who's picking up the endorsement of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez here in New York today, he's running for office saying, look, yeah, we're going to raise your taxes, but you're going to do better in the long run because you won't have to pay health insurance premiums. You won't have to pay health care deductibles. Okay, at least be honest with me. Elizabeth Warren is living in this economic utopia where we can just pay for things without paying for them. So the last clip I want to play, and I want to save some of this for John Burnett in a little bit. I spent a lot of time 2 days ago taking issue with the New York Times coverage of Tulsi Gabbard this weekend. To me, it is absolutely absurd that the New York Times they were the co-sponsor of this debate, and it's absolutely absurd to me that they were acting like neutral arbiters in a contest when they clearly have both barrels. Take a look at what she said.
Donald Trump has the blood of the Kurds on his hand, but so do many of the politicians in our country from both parties who have supported this ongoing regime change war in Syria that started in 2011. New York Times and CNN have also smeared veterans like myself for calling for an end to this regime change war. Just 2 days ago, the New York Times put out an article saying that I'm a Russian asset and an Assad apologist and all these different smears. This morning, a CNN commentator said on national television that I'm an asset of Russia. Completely despicable.
Well, good for Tulsi Gabbard for taking it right to him. To be honest, I don't understand why you even need moderators in these debates. I was watching Anderson Cooper in one debate question, and he had to give a 90-second disclaimer about how the Bidens hadn't done anything wrong before he even asked his question. I say, let's do these debates, no moderator. Let these candidates up there on the stage. May the best man or woman win. Let them all try and talk. Let's see how it goes. To me, wouldn't that be more interesting than this idiocy? If you get 75 seconds to answer a question, but if your name's brought up, then you get to retort. What you're seeing here is 12 candidates who all have pre-prepared quips that they're hoping get repeated and repeated on the news cycle. That's not a debate. It does nothing to tell you about where these candidates stand on any of these issues. I think it's absurd, quite honestly. We're going to get into it not only with John Burnett, but with Michael Tracy a little bit later. He is the only person worth following on Twitter, and I include myself in that. He is a straight shooter. He's been all over Syria, all over Ukraine Gate, all about how they're trying to smear Tulsi as an agent of Russia and an agent of Assad, and I'm looking forward to talking with him a little bit later. Now, an issue that is very important to me. I had to go to New Jersey last night, and it ended up being very, very far away from where I live, maybe about an hour. And happy to go. I was there supporting a friend of mine that's running for office out there. He's been a good friend to me, gave a very generous wedding gift, I might add. And he offers to send a driver, which was very nice because they're serving alcohol at his fundraiser. He wanted me to be able to drink and not have to worry about driving. Now, turns out I really didn't drink much anyway because I wouldn't drink until after I spoke because I don't want to slur my words and sound like an idiot, unlike on this show where I have no problem sounding like an idiot. But the driver that he has picked me up, great guy, a staffer of his, he's talking to me the whole way. And even more, finally on the way there, I was able to say, pal, let me close my eyes for 15 minutes. Finally, I get 15 minutes of shut-eye. Then on the way back, I didn't say anything. This guy just went talking the whole way. All I wanted to do was sleep for the hour ride back to Staten Island. And I got nothing but I learned more about Bergen County freeholders in the course of this 45 minutes than I ever cared to learn. I don't even care about Bergen County freeholders. And yet I'm just trying to there was no break in the conversation for me to say, hey, all right, let me close my eyes. He just kept going. I don't understand. I hope that's not how I am with people. But the reason I'm mentioning this is we've spent a lot of time on this show talking about the gig economy, Uber drivers, Lyft drivers, Via drivers. I would like to suggest to the good folks and the not so good folks over at Uber and Lyft and all these e-hail companies that they institute a preference. When you summon your vehicle, you can say you don't want the driver to talk to you, because you don't want to be rude to these drivers that are picking you up, and sometimes you are in the talkative mood, other times you just want to sleep. There should be, when you call your Uber or your Lyft, an option silent driver. When you take an Amtrak or on a lot of other commuter rail lines, you can go into a quiet car where there's no talking. Why do you not have that option with e-hail vehicles or car services of all types? I'm trying to get this going. I am trying to make this a national movement. Uber, Lyft, Via, we're calling you out. We're asking you to give your users the option of a quiet Uber ride, an Uber ride in silence, not where I'm hearing all sorts of weird songs on the radio. And then this guy who picked me up last night, he left a message for somebody on his mobile phone as he's dropping me off. Now, this wasn't an Uber, but I'm hoping that the principal will catch on all over the place. This must have been a 90-second message that he left for this guy. And all I'm thinking of is, thank goodness I'm not on the receiving end of this message. So that's all I have to say about that. If you want to weigh in, I will read your tweets on air at Frank Morano. You can find me on Twitter at Frank Morano. That's Frank, M-O-R-A-N-O. We're also on Twitter at Liquid Lunch TV. And you can find me on Facebook as well at facebook.com/Morano Fan. That's facebook.com/Morano Fan. Now, we're going to cover at length throughout the program the news out of Syria. Now, today was a banner day, because President Trump is meeting with congressional leaders, including Nancy Pelosi, for the first time since they began this impeachment inquiry, and the subject was Turkey versus the Kurds. Now, the news that's come out yesterday is that the Russians are now protecting the Kurds. And I'm still struggling to understand why the foreign policy establishment is seeing red over this. Because as I see it, this is the best of all worlds. No American troops in Syria, no American troops being killed in Syria, Kurds not being massacred because they're being protected by the Russians, our alliance with Turkey is strong, and Syria gets to worry about its own country instead of having us intervene in it. I think this worked out pretty well for us. If Russia and Turkey and the Kurds want to keep each other busy while America actually focuses on, heaven forbid, America, I'm all for that. We're going to have a panel of experts, including John Burnett, including Michael Tracy. We're going to get into Medicare in a little while. It is open enrollment season very shortly on Medicare. We'll tell you what that means for you and what tips you need to keep in mind throughout the program. You're watching Liquid Lunch TV. We'll check in with John Tabacco, who's the normal host of this program, in a little while. In the meantime, I'm Frank Morano. Hopefully I'll see you in just a couple of minutes.